This vodcast is on how trees transport water and nutrients. So you can put your heading as transport. Just like in our bodies, we have special types of tissue that do certain things, like our muscle tissue that helps with movement, our bone tissue that helps with structure and support. Plants also have different types of tissues in them that do different things. The type of tissue we're going to be looking at specifically in this vodcast is called vascular tissue. And this is the tissue of plants that carries around things the plant needs. For example, water, food, dissolved substances. And since we're talking about trees and tree transport specifically, I'll keep referring to this vascular tissue as though we were discussing only trees. But all plants go through this process of moving water and food around through their system from their roots up their stems to their leaves and back again. The first type of vascular tissue that is important to plants is called xylem. I know it starts with an X, but it's pronounced with a Z. Xylem. Xylem is responsible for carrying around the water, and then in that water is often dissolved materials like ions and minerals and things like that that are already dissolved in the water. So the xylem is these tubes that run through the plant that helps to move the water around. It always moves the water away from the roots, which makes sense because plants get their water that they need from their roots. Okay, the water that rains on them and lands on their leaves is useless to them. It has to be soaked up from the ground in their roots. So xylem moves the water from the roots up through the plants. The cells that make up xylem actually only have a cell wall. So they don't have any cytoplasm in them, they don't have any mitochondria, they don't have a nucleus. It's like a hollow cell, like a straw. That's only, as I said, a cell wall. There are two types of cells that make up xylem, these straw-type cells. The first ones are called the vessel elements, and they look like straws, stacked from end to end to form vessels, or straws, or tubes, or however you want to think of it. There's a diagram of these over here, and if that helps you to draw yourself a picture, you can go right ahead and do that. So right here is that vessel, gotta get rid of my old drawings, is the vessel elements. And you can see they look like a straw with parts stacked on top of each other. Again, they're hollow, they don't have anything in them. The next one there we go. Well, that should be a B. Are the tracheids. We'll change that real quick. B. The tracheids are stacked beside each other, and you can see that in the drawing as well. They have what are called end walls, and so between them, let's see if I can kind of highlight where that is here. See this little kind of space here where the two sides of the tracheid cells come together? That's that end wall. That is what's characteristic of these tracheid cells. So instead of being end to end, like the vessel members are, or the vessel elements, same name, or same thing, different name, they're stacked side by side, so they have these walls between them. And this is specific to conifers, which we just talked about earlier in the week. So the xylem in conifers is a little bit different than that in other trees, and in that they have more of these tracheids than other trees do. Alright, the second type of vascular tissue that we find in plants, we're just going to briefly talk about today, is called phloem, and this is responsible for moving sugar, or the plant's food, around the entire plant. And these can be moved, or this can be moved in all directions. So phloem doesn't only move sugar from the roots up. It can move up, down, back and forth, wherever the sugar is needed. Now the sugar is made in the leaves through photosynthesis. Alright, so it always starts in the leaves. But from there it can move all over the plant. Same thing, the mature cells only consist of a cell wall, so nothing else inside those cells. And we've got different types again. The sieve tube members are tubes that are stacked end to end with no nuclei. Sound familiar? Kind of like the xylem. Just going to point those out to you. So, let's see. Sieve tube members. Right here, sieve tube elements, same thing. Okay, again, we're creating kind of like a straw effect. Maybe better a different color. How about a blue? There, that highlights it a little bit better. So there's one of those hollow cells. Again, if you want to draw a diagram in your notebook of what these look like, that might be helpful. The second type, letter B, are called companion cells. And these are a little different than all the other cells we've talked about so far. They do have a nucleus. So they're not hollow. They're next to the sieve tube members, and they help to kind of control what's going on with those sieve tube members, how much sugar they're circulating and things like that. So let me just point out where those are over here. Do you see it kind of stuck to the side? Right there of that sieve tube member is what we call a companion cell, and it does have a nucleus in it. Again, these are common or more common in conifers. So we're seeing at the microscopic level there are some differences between deciduous trees that lose their leaves, have broad-leafed flowering seeds, and the conifers, which we talked about earlier in the week. Okay, so just to kind of wrap up that little section in a diagram, again, this might be helpful for you to draw. We're going to look at xylem and phloem kind of separately here. Xylem is down here on the left-hand side. We've got hollow tubes, as you can see in this drawing. Okay, the water only flows one direction. That's why we're showing these arrows. The water's flowing up from the roots. There's minerals dissolved in there as well. It makes like a complete straw with no end walls, unless of course you were a conifer, and we talked about that a little bit. And then these cell walls on the side, okay, kind of build the structure of it. So that's the cells together and how they move the water through the plant. If you're looking at phloem, which again is moving sugar, it looks a little different. The things that stand out are, first of all, these arrows are going in different directions, showing that sugar can move, up, down, side to side, wherever it needs to go from the leaves. Okay, we're transporting water and food, right? The sugar that I just talked about. There are little end walls between the cells here. So one right here, one right here, with little holes between them so that the sugar can flow through. And you can see on the sides we do have some companion cells. Okay, down here and down here. Okay, helping to control the flow of the sugar through that phloem.